Imagine a bitter February morning in 1511, the kind that chills you to the bone, where the most powerful king in Europe stands helpless, cradling his newborn son as the tiny spark of life fades away. That child, just 7 weeks old, isn't just any infant. He's Prince Henry Tudor, the heir to England's throne, the fragile hope of a dynasty teetering on the edge. His death isn't just a father's heartbreak. It's the crack that will split a kingdom wide open, unleashing a storm of violence, betrayal, and revolution that will echo through centuries. Welcome to Grim Chronicles, where we dive into the darkest corners of history. And today, we're telling a story that's been buried by time but changed the world forever. This isn't just about a baby's death. It's about how one fleeting life sent England spiraling into chaos, birthing a tyrant and reshaping a nation. So, grab a seat, because this tale is going to haunt you long after the candles burn out. We're in 1510, and England's alive with a vibrancy you can almost taste. Henry VIII, barely 19, has been king for 2 years, and he's everything his father, Henry VII, wasn't: young, athletic, dripping with charisma. The court's a whirlwind of tournaments, feasts, and music, a dazzling display of a kingdom on the rise. Henry's married to Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish princess 6 years older, and their union cements a crucial alliance with Spain. Europe's watching England closely, a rising star in a world where France, the Holy Roman Empire, and Scotland are always probing for weakness. But beneath the glitter, there's a shadow. The Tudor dynasty, forged in the blood of the Wars of the Roses just 26 years ago, is still fragile. Henry's father spent his reign crushing rebels and pretenders, and everyone knows the only way to secure the throne is a male heir. Without one, England could plunge back into civil war, the kind of chaos that leaves scars for generations. Infant mortality is brutal. 1 in 3 children doesn't survive their first year. So when Catherine announces her first pregnancy in 1510, the kingdom holds its breath, praying for a son to lock in the Tudor legacy. That first pregnancy ends in devastation, a stillborn daughter. The news hits like a thunderbolt. The Spanish ambassador writes to King Ferdinand, Catherine's father, describing Henry's anguish and Catherine's crushing sorrow. The pressure's on, not just for the royal couple but for the entire nation. Europe's a chessboard, with France eyeing English territories, Scotland stirring trouble in the north, and new Protestant ideas whispering rebellion in Germany. A king without an heir is a king on borrowed time. The court physicians, trapped in medieval nonsense, are no help, prescribing bloodletting, mixing herbs with animal parts, muttering about wombs wandering the body or stars dictating fate. It's a world where hope rests on superstition and prayers, not science. When Catherine announces her second pregnancy in late 1510, the stakes are sky high. The entire kingdom, from nobles in velvet to peasants in the fields, is praying for a boy. This child isn't just a baby. It's England's future, the difference between peace and anarchy. As winter tightens its grip, the court buzzes with anticipation. On January 1st, 1511, as the new year dawns, Catherine's labor begins at Richmond Palace. The birthing room is like a sacred shrine. Tapestries block the windows, incense clouds the air, and relics gleam in the flicker of countless candles. Henry paces outside, his usual swagger replaced by raw nerves. Then, around 10 a.m., a cry cuts through the silence. It's a boy, a perfect, red-haired prince, with his father's vigor and the promise of a secure dynasty. The court explodes with joy. Bells ring across London. Bonfires blaze from Cornwall to the Scottish border, and messengers race to spread the news. Henry's beside himself, weeping openly, his hands trembling as he pens letters to every monarch in Europe. This is Prince Henry Tudor, Duke of Cornwall, England's salvation. The celebrations are a spectacle for the ages. Church bells clang for 3 days straight, a deafening roar of triumph. Westminster Abbey hosts hourly masses, its altar dripping with gold and silver, the choir's hymns soaring to the heavens. Taverns pour free ale. Coins stamped with the royal arms rain down on the poor, and the court's flooded with gifts. golden cradles from Venice, silks from France, relics from Spain. Henry's planning a tournament to rival anything Europe's seen, with pavilions draped in cloth of gold and feasts boasting peacocks and sugar sculptures. It's a bold statement. The Tudors are untouchable. The baptism is a diplomatic masterstroke, with godparents like Louis XII of France and Margaret of Austria tying Europe's powers to the infant prince. The ceremony at Richmond Palace is a dazzling display. Silver fonts, cloth of gold, holy water blessed by the Pope himself. The baby, swathed in silk and gold, cries with a strength everyone sees as a sign of future greatness. But this moment, this golden flicker of hope, is where the story starts to twist. The prince's nursery is a marvel, a miniature court of its own. His rooms are kept warm by constant fires, the walls hung with tapestries of English heroes. Over 30 staff, wet nurses, rockers, watchers, tend to his every need. His tiny clothes are works of art, silk and velvet embroidered with pearls, blessed by chaplains. Henry visits daily, his pride obvious, a side of him the court rarely sees. Security is intense. Guards at every door, food tasters for the wet nurses. Every feeding, every cry is recorded with obsessive detail. The physicians, led by Dr. Fernando Victoria, are cautiously optimistic. The prince is gaining weight, responding well, crying lustily. For 7 weeks, England's future seems secure. But history, as we know here at Grimm Chronicles, loves to pull the rug out. Around the 6th week, something's off. The prince's feeding turns erratic. Sometimes he's eager, sometimes listless. His cries soften, his movements slow. The nursery staff notice his complexion paling at times, though it's hard to say why. Dr. Victoria orders more checks, pores over ancient texts, but he's grasping in the dark. The court starts whispering, though no one dares speak their fears aloud. Henry, during his daily visits, senses it too, his questions to the physicians growing sharper. Catherine, still recovering from childbirth, spends hours watching her son, her instincts screaming something's wrong. By early February, the signs are clear. The prince's breathing is off, his energy fading. Dr. Victoria finally tells Henry, trying to soften the blow with talk of infants recovering. But the truth is slipping away. On February 22nd, 1511, it happens. In the early morning, the night watchers see the prince's breathing turn labored, his skin gray. Dr. Victoria and his team rush in, trying everything: herbs, bloodletting, prayers. But it's futile. By 11 a.m., after a final, agonizing struggle, Prince Henry Tudor is gone. Henry, holding his son as life drains away, is shattered. The king who commands armies is just a father now, sobbing over a tiny body. Catherine collapses, her grief so raw her attendants fear for her life. The palace, once alive with joy, is a tomb. The physicians can't explain it. Just another mysterious ailment in an age where babies die without reason. The news spreads and England mourns. Bonfires are doused, bells silenced, tournament plans scrapped. Henry tries to keep up appearances, proclaiming he's young, that more heirs will come. But in private, he's unraveling, irritable, withdrawn, hunting to exhaustion like he's fleeing his own thoughts. The funeral is his way of channeling grief into grandeur. Westminster Abbey becomes a cathedral of sorrow, draped in black, lit by thousands of candles. The tiny coffin, oak and velvet, lies under a golden canopy. The procession through London stretches miles, with nobles, clergy, and citizens paying respects. Archbishop Warham's service, filled with music and prayers, is a desperate plea for divine favor. But the breaking of the prince's staff of office feels like the breaking of England's dreams. The kingdom's in shock, but the real storm is just beginning. Henry VIII's still young, still the king who dazzles Europe, but the loss of his son has carved a wound that won't heal. Catherine of Aragon, reeling from grief, is under crushing pressure. She's Spain's princess, England's queen, but her worth is tied to producing a male heir. That stillborn daughter in 1510 was bad enough, but losing Prince Henry, who seemed so perfect, is a blow the court interprets as a sign. maybe God's turned against the Tudors. The political landscape is brutal. France is eyeing English territories, Scotland's raiding the border, and Protestant ideas are stirring in Germany, threatening the Catholic order. Henry knows his dynasty's survival hinges on a son. The Wars of the Roses are still fresh, with memories of pretenders like Lambert Simnel and Perkin Warbeck who nearly tore England apart. Without an heir, the kingdom could fracture again. Catherine's next pregnancies are a national obsession. Each announcement revives hope, with prayers, relics, and incense begging for a boy. But the pattern is merciless. Miscarriage, stillbirth, another child gone. Each loss chips away at Henry's patience and Catherine's spirit. She's in her 30s now, old for childbearing in this era, and the weight of Spain, England, and her own guilt is crushing. The physicians, with their medieval remedies, bloodletting, herbal potions, are useless, often doing more harm than good. Henry's changing. The king who wept with joy at his son's birth is growing distant, his temper flaring. Courtiers see him skip feasts for hunting marathons, like he's trying to outrun his grief. His faith, once a comfort, is turning into a battlefield. He's questioning why God took his son, why his prayers go unanswered. The court's whispering about a curse, and Henry's starting to believe it. The nobles are playing a dangerous game. Some stay loyal to Catherine, tied to her Spanish roots and piety. Others sense opportunity, wondering if Henry will look elsewhere. The idea of divorce is unthinkable, but it's there, like a shadow in the corner. Henry's digging into scripture, fixating on passages about marriage and fertility, searching for answers. His advisor, Cardinal Wolsey, is rising fast, manipulating the king's grief to build his own power. Europe's watching, recalculating. France, Spain, the Habsburgs, they're all reassessing England's stability now that the Tudor heir is gone. The court's a chessboard with every move calculated. Henry's spending hours with theologians, pouring money into churches, funding masses, praying at shrines. But the heavens stay silent, and every failed pregnancy feels like a divine slap. By 1516, Catherine gives birth to Mary, a healthy daughter, and there's a flicker of hope. But a girl isn't enough, not for Henry, not for England. The pressure keeps building, and the court's fracturing. Some nobles back Catherine, others eye the future, whispering about a new queen. Henry's reading old laws, exploring succession options, but a female heir like Mary is a gamble, and naming a distant cousin risks rival claims. His grief is turning into paranoia, his faith into a weapon. He's seeing enemies everywhere, in his advisors, his church, even his wife. The golden boy is fading, replaced by a man who's starting to scare those around him. The court's buzzing with rumors of mistresses, though nothing serious yet. But there's a new face catching Henry's eye, and Boleyn, sharp, ambitious, and dangerous. The stage is set for something seismic, and that empty cradle from 1511 is about to cast a long, dark shadow. The years roll into the early 1520s, and England's court is a pressure cooker. Henry VIII's grief over Prince Henry has hardened into an obsession that's reshaping him. He's still the athletic king who dazzles Europe, but there's a darkness now, a restlessness. Catherine's string of failed pregnancies, miscarriages, stillbirths, infants who don't survive is wearing him down. Their daughter Mary, born in 1516, is healthy, but a girl won't cut it. England's never had a queen regnant, and the idea of Mary ruling is a risk Henry can't stomach. The court's tense, nobles picking sides, ambassadors scribbling coded letters. The church offers prayers but no answers, and Henry's pouring fortunes into monasteries, funding masses, making pilgrimages, desperate for a son. But God's not answering, and he's starting to wonder why. And Boleyn is no longer just a courtier. She's a spark in a powder keg. She's vibrant, clever, with a French polish that sets her apart from Catherine's quiet piety. By the mid-1520s, Henry's infatuation is growing, and the court's noticing. Whispers spread. Could she be the answer to the succession crisis? Catherine's in her 40s, her childbearing years fading. She's still queen, but her position's slipping. Spain's influence hinges on her delivering an heir, and her father, Ferdinand, is nervous. Henry's seeing her as an obstacle, not a partner. Divorce is a radical thought, but it's taking root. The problem is the Catholic Church, the bedrock of Europe. Divorce means an annulment from the Pope, and that's a tall order. Henry's a devout Catholic for now, but he's obsessing over a Bible verse in Leviticus, claiming his marriage to Catherine, his brother's widow, is cursed, causing their childlessness. He's got theologians arguing over canon law, searching for a loophole. Cardinal Wolsey, Henry's right-hand man, is walking a tightrope, balancing the king's demands with the Pope's politics. Pope Clement VII is caught between Henry and Catherine's nephew, Emperor Charles V, who won't let his aunt be cast aside. By 1527, Henry's decided he wants out. He's in love with or thinks he is, and believes she'll give him a son. The great matter consumes him, with envoys sent to Rome, demanding an annulment. The Pope stalls, trapped by Charles V's power after the sack of Rome. The court's a battlefield. Catherine's fighting back, rallying her supporters, while Anne's faction grows. Nobles are splitting, some seeing her as a homewrecker, others as a path to power. The tension's thick, like everyone's waiting for the storm to break. If Prince Henry had lived, none of this would be happening. Catherine would still be queen, the church untouchable, the Tudor line secure. But that tiny death in 1511 is driving Henry to madness. He's fighting fate, God, his own fears. By the late 1520s, he's listening to radicals like Thomas Cranmer and Thomas Cromwell, who suggest the Pope's authority might not be absolute. It's a dangerous idea, fueled by Protestant reformers shaking Europe. Henry's not a Protestant yet, but he's desperate enough to consider anything. In 1533, he makes his move, marrying Anne in secret while she's pregnant and declaring himself supreme head of the Church of England, breaking with Rome. It's a seismic shift, born from the desperation of that empty cradle. Monasteries are dissolved, their wealth seized, their lands redistributed to nobles. Thomas More, refusing to swear allegiance, faces the axe. Catherine's banished, dying in exile in 1536, and gives birth to Elizabeth, another daughter, and Henry's frustration explodes. By 1536, Anne's beheaded, accused of treason and adultery, her fate sealed by a king who's no longer the man he was. The England of 1511 is a distant memory. Henry's break with Rome has unleashed a revolution. The court's a place of fear, where loyalty shifts with the wind. Thousands will die, Catholics, Protestants, anyone who crosses the king. The loss of Prince Henry has turned Henry VIII into a man who'll burn down his kingdom to secure his dynasty, and the ripples are just beginning to spread. By the 1530s, England's unrecognizable. Henry VIII's break with Rome has made him a king who bows to no one. Not the Pope, not his nobles, not even God, or so it seems. The dissolution of the monasteries is in full swing. Ancient religious houses torn down, their treasures feeding the royal treasury. It's a power grab, but also a statement. Henry's the ultimate authority. The nobles are terrified, navigating a court where one wrong word means death. Thomas More, once Henry's friend, is beheaded for refusing to accept him as head of the church. Thomas Cromwell, who orchestrated the Reformation, rises high but isn't safe. Henry's paranoia spares no one. And Boleyn's execution in 1536 is a brutal milestone. She gave Henry Elizabeth, but no son, and her ambition made enemies. Accused of adultery and treason, she's gone, and Henry moves to Jane Seymour, who delivers a son, Edward, in 1537. But Jane dies in childbirth, and Edward's frail. The succession's still shaky. Henry marries 3 more times, and of Cleves, Catherine Howard, Catherine Parr. But the pattern of loss and desperation continues. Catherine Howard's executed for adultery, and the court's a place of dread, where loyalty is a gamble. Let's zoom out. If Prince Henry had lived, Catherine would have stayed queen, the Catholic Church would have held firm, and Elizabeth, one of history's greatest monarchs, would never have been born. The Elizabethan age, Shakespeare, the Spanish Armada, English naval power wouldn't exist. The monasteries would stand, their wealth untouched, and the nobles wouldn't gain the power that came with their fall. England's path as a Protestant maritime empire would be erased. The British Empire, Anglicanism, the cultural DNA of the English-speaking world, all trace back to that tiny prince's death. Henry's later years are grim. He's obese, sick, haunted by the ghosts of those he's killed. The executions of More, John Fisher and Bullen, Catherine Howard, and countless others, Catholics, Protestants, nobles, commoners, are tied to his obsession with a male heir. The religious persecution, the burning of martyrs, the destruction of traditions, all stem from that February morning in 1511. The Tudor dynasty survives, but at a cost. Edward VI, sickly, dies in 1553, leading to Mary's bloody reign and Elizabeth's golden one. But Henry's desperation shapes them all. His grief wasn't just about losing a son. It was about losing his vision of himself as God's chosen king. Every dead child chipped away at his faith, turning it into a weapon. He saw enemies everywhere, in his wives, his advisors, his church. The man who wept over his son became a tyrant who'd execute anyone in his way. The ripple effects are staggering. The Protestant Reformation, sparked by Henry's break with Rome, reshapes Europe's religious landscape. The rise of parliamentary power, as nobles gain from the monasteries' fall, sets England toward constitutional government. The naval supremacy born with Elizabeth's Armada victory traces back to Henry's need to assert power. Even the British Empire, dominating centuries later, has roots in this moment. It all comes back to a baby who lived 52 days, whose death rewrote history. The chilling truth is that the religious freedom, cultural achievements, and global influence of the English-speaking world were bought with blood. Thousands died because a king couldn't escape his grief. Prince Henry Tudor never ruled, never spoke, but his death was one of history's pivotal moments. Sometimes the smallest lives cast the longest shadows. Here at Grim Chronicles, we tell these stories to show that history's not just dates and names. It's human, raw, and brutal. What do you think? How would England look today if Prince Henry had lived? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell for more dark tales. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time as we uncover another forgotten ghost of history.